The Commentators. Sun Tzu can boast an exceptionally long distinguished roll of commentators, which would do honor to any classic. Yang remarks on this fact, though he wrote before the tale was complete, and rather ingeniously explains it by saying that the artifices of war, being inexhaustible, must therefore be susceptible of treatment in a great variety of ways. 1. Zhao Zhao or Zhao Kung, afterwards known as Wei Wu Ti, AD 155–220. There is hardly any room for doubt that the earliest commentary on Sun Tzu actually came from the pen of this extraordinary man, whose biography in the San Kuo-chi reads like a romance. One of the greatest military geniuses that the world has seen, and Napoleonic in the scale of his operations, he was especially famed for the marvelous rapidity of his marches, which has found expression in the line talk of Zhao Zhao, and Zhao Zhao will appear. Yang says of him that he was a great captain who measured his strength against Tung Chou, Lu Hu and the two Yuan, father and son, and vanquished them all, whereupon he divided the empire of Han with Wu and Shu, and made himself king. It is recorded that whenever a council of war was held by Wei on the eve of a far-reaching campaign, he had all his calculations ready. Those generals who made use of them did not lose one battle in 10, those who ran counter to them in any particular saw their armies incontinently beaten and put to flight. Zhao Kung's notes on Sun Tzu, models of austere brevity, are so thoroughly characteristic of the stern commander known to history, that it is hard indeed to conceive of them as the work of a mere literator. Sometimes, indeed, owing to extreme compression, they are scarcely intelligible and stand no less in need of a commentary than the text itself. 2. Mengshi. The commentary which has come down to us under this name is comparatively meager, and nothing about the author is known. Even his personal name has not been recorded. Chi Tianpao's edition places him after Chia Lin, and Cao Kung Wu also assigns him to the Tang dynasty, 41, but this is a mistake. In Sun Xingyan's preface, he appears as Mengshi of the Liang dynasty, 500–557. Others would identify him with Mengkang of the 3rd century. He is named in one work as the last of the 5 commentators, the others being Wei Wu Ti, Tu Mu, Chun Hao and Xia Lin. 3. Li Chuan of the 8th century was a well-known writer on military tactics. One of his works has been in constant use down to the present day. The Tongchi mentions lives of famous generals from the Chu to the Tang dynasty as written by him. 42 According to Cao Kung Wu and the Tianiko Catalogue, he followed a variant of the text of Sun Tzu which differs considerably from those now extant. His notes are mostly short and to the point, and he frequently illustrates his remarks by anecdotes from Chinese history. 4. Tu Yu, died 812, did not publish a separate commentary on Sun Tzu, his notes being taken from the Tung Tian, the encyclopedic treatise on the Constitution which was his life work. They are largely repetitions of Zhao Kung and Mengshi, besides which it is believed that he drew on the ancient commentaries of Wang Ling and others. Owing to the peculiar arrangement of Tung Tian, he has to explain each passage on its merits, apart from the context, and sometimes his own explanation does not agree with that of Zhao Kung, whom he always quotes first. Though not strictly to be reckoned as one of the 10 commentators, he was added to their number by Chi Tianpao, being wrongly placed after his grandson Tu Mu. 5. Tu Mu, 803–852, is perhaps the best known as a poet, a bright star even in the glorious galaxy of the Tang period. We learn from Cao Kung Wu that although he had no practical experience of war, he was extremely fond of discussing the subject, and was moreover well read in the military history of the Chun Chiyu and Chan Kuo eras. His notes, therefore, are well worth attention. They are very copious, and replete with historical parallels. The gist of Sun Tzu's work is thus summarized by him: practice benevolence and justice, but on the other hand make full use of artifice and measures of expediency. He further declared that all the military triumphs and disasters of the 1,000 years which had elapsed since Sun Tzu's death would, upon examination, be found to uphold and corroborate, in every particular, the maxims contained in his book. Tu Mu's somewhat spiteful charge against Zhao Kung has already been considered elsewhere. 6. Chun Hao appears to have been a contemporary of Tu Mu. Cao Kung-wu says that he was impelled to write a new commentary on Sun Tzu because Zhao Kung's on the one hand was too obscure and subtle, and that of Tu Mu on the other too long-winded and diffuse. Wu Yanxiu, writing in the middle of the 11th century, calls Zhao Kung, Tu Mu and Chun Hao the three chief commentators on Sun Tzu, and observes that Chun Hao is continually attacking Tu Mu's shortcomings. His commentary, though not lacking in merit, must rank below those of his predecessors. 7. Xie Lin is known to have lived under the Tang dynasty, for his commentary on Sun Tzu is mentioned in the Tang Shu and was afterwards republished by Qi Shi of the same dynasty together with those of Mengxi and Tu Yu. It is of somewhat scanty texture, and in point of quality, too, perhaps the least valuable of the 11. 8. Ma Yaochun, 1002–1060, commonly known by his style as Ma Shengyu, was, like Tu Mu, a poet of distinction. His commentary was published with a laudatory preface by the great Wu Yanxiu, from which we may cull the following. Later scholars have misread Sun Tzu, distorting his words and trying to make them square with their own one-sided views. Thus, though commentators have not been lacking, only a few have proved equal to the task. My friend Shengyu has not fallen into this mistake. In attempting to provide a critical commentary for Sun Tzu's work, he does not lose sight of the fact that these sayings were intended for states engaged in internecine warfare, that the author is not concerned with the military conditions prevailing under the sovereigns of the three ancient dynasties, 43 nor with the 9 punitive measures prescribed to the minister of war. 44 Again, Sun Wu loved brevity of diction, but his meaning is always deep. Whether the subject be marching an army, or handling soldiers, or estimating the enemy, or controlling the forces of victory, it is always systematically treated. The sayings are bound together in strict logical sequence, though this has been obscured by commentators who have probably failed to grasp their meaning. In his own commentary, Ma Shengyu has brushed aside all the obstinate prejudices of these critics, and has tried to bring out the true meaning of Sun Tzu himself. In this way, the clouds of confusion have been dispersed and the sayings made clear. I am convinced that the present work deserves to be handed down side by side with the three great commentaries, and for a great deal that they find in the sayings, coming generations will have constant reason to thank my friend Shengyu. Making some allowance for the exuberance of friendship, I am inclined to endorse this favorable judgment, and would certainly place him above Chun Hao in order of merit. 9. Wang Hsi, also of the Sung dynasty, is decidedly original in some of his interpretations, but much less judicious than Ma Yaochun, and on the whole not a very trustworthy guide. He is fond of comparing his own commentary with that of Zhao Kung, but the comparison is not often flattering to him. We learn from Cao Kung-wu that Wang Hsi revised the ancient text of Sun Tzu, filling up lacunae and correcting mistakes. 10. Huyan Hsi of the Sung dynasty. The personal name of this commentator is given as above by Cheng Qiao in the Tung Qin, written about the middle of the 12th century, but he appears simply as Ho Shi in the Yu Hai, and Ma Tuanlin quotes Cao Kung-wu as saying that his personal name is unknown. There seems to be no reason to doubt Cheng Qiao's statement, otherwise I should have been inclined to hazard a guess and identify him with one Ho Chuf, the author of a short treatise on war, who lived in the latter part of the 11th century. Ho Shi's commentary, in the words of the Tianaikou catalogue, contains helpful additions here and there, but is chiefly remarkable for the copious extracts taken, in adapted form, from the dynastic histories and other sources. 11. Chang Yu. The list closes with a commentator of no great originality perhaps, but gifted with admirable powers of lucid exposition. His commentator is based on that of Zhao Kung, whose terse sentences he contrives to expand and develop in masterly fashion. Without Chang Yu, it is safe to say that much of Zhao Kung's commentary would have remained cloaked in its pristine obscurity and therefore valueless. His work is not mentioned in the Sung history, the Tongkao, or the Yu Hai, but it finds a niche in the Tung Qin, which also names him as the author of the lives of famous generals. It is rather remarkable that the last named four should all have flourished within so short a space of time. Cao Kung-wu accounts for it by saying, During the early years of the Song dynasty the empire enjoyed a long spell of peace, and men ceased to practice the art of war. But when Zhao Yuanhao's rebellion came, 1038-42, and the frontier generals were defeated time after time, the court made strenuous inquiry for men skilled in war, and military topics became the vogue amongst all the high officials. Hence it is that the commentators of Sun Tzu in our dynasty belong mainly to that period. Besides these 11 commentators, there are several others whose work has not come down to us. The Sui Shu mentions 4, namely Wang Ling, often quoted by Tuyu as Wang Tzu, Chang Tzu Shang, Xia Shu of Wei, 48 and Shan Nu of Wu. The Tang Shu adds Sun Hao, and the Tung Chi Shao Qi, while the Shu mentions a Ming commentator, Huang Junyu. It is possible that some of these may have been merely collectors and editors of other commentaries, like Qi Tianpao and Qi Shi.